So when you're marrying somebody, this is what you've got to understand. You are now going to have that type of relationship. You're going to be that close with this person. Because you're so surprised, it means there's something inside of you that you need to understand about yourself. And we all have a dark side. We all have these, we're all human beings, we all have these issues. But when that happens, this marriage, the friction is going to bring these things out of you. If you're too happy to get married, don't get married. Stay happy. Okay, inshallah. Okay, inshallah. So the format for today, it's quite flexible. I've just got a few points I want to just make. These are just reflections, really, from what I've been seeing happening in primarily in people's marriages. So for those who don't know, I've been involved in this area of dealing with family issues and marriage issues since the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. And so on a regular basis, I'm talking to people, and if anyone wants to follow this up with a specific issue, you can contact me through our charity, Unity Family Services, and it's a free service. You just make an appointment and we can discuss specifically your particular issue, whatever you're needing advice and guidance on. When I'm answering questions, there is a generic feel to it, because sometimes the answer can change depending on the circumstances, and because we don't know always what is the actual situation, what's actually happening. So sometimes I'll just kind of give general principles or general rules, but they could be specific to you, so the answer might change. So just bear that in mind. So I think there's just a couple of critical things over time, which when you deal with a number of cases and you start to see patterns, you start to see what's happening in terms of where marriages are, you could say, going wrong, or they're not maybe achieving what we want to achieve when we get married. For those who are not married, and I know there seems to be quite a few people who are not married here, I think just out of all the things I could probably tell you is that when you're looking to get married, okay, you're maybe in your 20s and you're looking to get married, and you have maybe an idea of the type of person you want to marry. Part of that actually requires you to understand yourself. So if you want to understand another person, you're courting somebody, you want to try and understand that person. The more you understand yourself, the better you can understand them. Because if you can't understand yourself, how are you going to understand the other person? And also at that stage, bear in mind that, the people that are married will understand this. People are a bit older will understand this. If you think of what you know of marriage now after being married, and go back to 15 years ago when you weren't married, you'll see a night and day difference. Like at that age, what did you think marriage was going to be, and what it actually in reality became is different. So always bear that in mind. So when you're courting, bear in mind when you're speaking to somebody and you're maybe asking questions, and the thing is that there's certain things about yourself you don't fully understand until you actually get married. And so it's not that people are maybe lying on purpose, but it could be that they just don't understand themselves very well. So they may say, yeah, I'm very patient. And you marry them and you think, did you not say to me you're very patient? Very impatient. It's not that the person's lying, it's just that they maybe believed they were patient. But then when their buttons were pushed, they realized, actually, I'm not as patient as I thought. So what happens is, with marriage, is that, as we know, the nature of this world, the dunya, and everyone knows this, the nature of this dunya is it's here to test us, right? It's a testing place, isn't it? And we have various tests. from when we're young to old. People in different parts of the world, as we know, as we speak right now, are being tested in ways we're not being tested. But everyone is being tested in some shape or form. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed this dunya to be a testing place, and marriage is going to be a large part of your life, do you think your marriage is going to be testing or not? By default, obviously, the marriage is going to have tests in it. So that's the first thing. So our kind of expectation, like if I'm coming to this event, right, and my expectation's false, so I'm expecting a 3-course meal, right? I'm expecting iron brew there, right? I'm expecting lots of things, and I get here and I just see dates and I think, where's the iron brew, right? Where's the meat? Where's the food? I'm going to be disappointed, but whose fault is that? Is that my fault, or is it the venue's fault? It's my fault because I had a false idea in my head, which I'm then projecting onto reality. So we have to be very clear when you're getting married what your expectation of marriage is. If your expectation is something unrealistic, then you're going to feel very dissatisfied because it's never going to achieve that. So that's something to bear in mind, that our expectations of marriage have got to be real, and although we might not realize it, but the things that we get fed go into our subconscious, like love songs and romantic movies, all that stuff that we see on the screens, all of it affects us. And so we start to have certain, and people start, obviously dreaming, isn't it? They want a dream wedding, they want everything perfect, perfect this, perfect that, but perfection does not exist in the world. Perfection is in the next life. So there was a line, I think it was our parenting coach, Sumbula, that said this line, and it really, I think summarized it, which was, you're an imperfect person, you're going to marry an imperfect person, and you have an imperfect marriage. You see? And if you start like that, then already you have a more realistic expectation of what's coming next, and less likely to feel disappointed. The next thing is that, because, like I said, the dunya is here to test us. And what does the test actually do? The test is to actually awaken something inside of you, right? All the things that we maybe wouldn't like to admit about ourselves. The test brings that out, and then God's saying, okay, are you going to now pass the test? Are you going to now overcome your anger, your impatience, your irritation, or whatever it might be? Are you going to be able to overcome that? So with marriage, because marriage is the first real, if you say, let's take a typical person, they've grown up, they've had siblings, went to university, got a job, after a few years, saved some money, getting married. So you're in your mid-20s, say late 20s, getting married. The first relationship that you're going to have, which is so close, is a marital relationship, which is why the way it's described in the Quran, that you're garments for one another. We always hear these verses, that you're garments for one another. What does a garment do, right? I'm wearing a coat. The coat's there to protect me from the elements. The clothes I wear, it's almost, for many people, for most of us, your clothes almost define who you are, isn't it? You can see a well-dressed person. If you go to work, you have to dress in a certain way. And so you're very conscious about what you're wearing when you're going to a wedding. You're very conscious about your colours and all the rest of it. So the clothing's not only that it's close to you, not only that it protects you, but it's also something that almost defines you. So when you're marrying somebody, this is what you've got to understand. You are now going to have that type of relationship. You're going to be that close with this person. And when you're that close with that person, you have friction, right? It causes friction. So you're going to have this friction, and the friction is there, and there's going to be certain things inside of you which maybe you don't even know about yourself, things which are dormant, where nothing is really done it, and nothing major has really happened in your life for that thing to come out of you. But now you've got somebody who's rubbing up against you, right? Up close, personal, in your personal space, everything. And that friction then starts to bring things out of us. So that's why people will say things like, I was fine till I got married. And then everything just went pear-shaped. I don't know what happened. This monster came out. I became this monster. Or they'll say, they'll behave in a certain way. That's not like me. Well, who is it? Who did it? It wasn't some other person. You did it. Where did it come from? Inside of you. Which means it exists. Which means you weren't aware of it because you're so surprised that I can't believe I did that. That means you don't understand yourself fully because you're so surprised. It means there's something inside of you that you need to understand about yourself. And we all have a dark side. We all have these, we're all human beings, we all have these issues. But when that happens, this marriage, the friction is going to bring these things out of you. You're going to feel emotions which maybe you never felt before. And we're kind of taken aback, like, oh my God, what's happening? Why am I feeling like this? And so you have other statements like, my spouse brings out the worst in me. Let's say that again, right? My spouse brings out the worst in me. So who's the bad person here? The spouse. That I was fine, but the spouse brings out the worst in me. No. It's you. The worst has come out of you. The spouse or the event or whatever is just a catalyst. It's just that thing that Allah put there to cause the friction. The friction was created, whether it's a spouse or whatever it is, or your children, and then all this stuff which is erupting out of you, this is coming out of you. And so what's happening is, God is actually revealing parts of you to you which you didn't even know. And the same thing's happening for the other person. And then the challenge is that, okay, right, I'm maybe not as patient as I thought, I'm maybe not as calm as I thought. I've got a bit of an anger issue here. I'm a bit of a perfectionist here. I'm quite stubborn. These are all the things that are coming out. And these are things which we find difficult to accept because we want to think, no, I'm not like that, I'm not like that, I'm not like that. Well, where is this coming from then? So you have to just accept that, look, I'm a human being. I've got an ego. Enough's. Every single one of us knows this. We've got an ego. Ego's that dark side of us. It's all the negative emotions, the negative stuff that comes from the ego. And all of us have an ego. And so this stuff which is coming out is not nice. It's not nice to admit you're a perfectionist or stubborn or whatever it might be. Or the buzzword these days is narcissist. Although I've never heard anyone say, I'm a narcissist, by the way. And I made a major discovery last week. I realized I'm a narcissist. No one does that. But what I do hear, my husband's a narcissist. My wife's a narcissist. My boss is everyone else is a narcissist. Everyone else is a narcissist, but we're not, no. You see, it's a very typical response. It's very easy to find faults in other people. But what are we told? We're told in the Day of Judgment, everyone for themselves, isn't it? Doesn't matter what everyone was doing, God's going to ask you about yourself. So we know this. We're supposed to be focusing on ourselves, but we're so fixated on other people. It was my wife, it was my husband, it was my children, it was whatever, my relatives. It's always somebody else and not us. So we have to take a bit more responsibility, responsibility, that no, if I got angry, that's me. If I got irritated, that's me. The other person is just there as a catalyst, right? When that comes out, it's not that you get depressed about it, that, I'm an awful person, I'm this and that. No, you're just a human being. Like every other human being. Some things are good, some things are not so good. But now that this has been exposed to you, that you've got a bit of a stubborn issue, now the challenge is, right, how am I going to overcome that? This is why, like there's a quote by Shaykh Amer, which you've probably heard before, that he used to say, he used to praise the person or speak well of the person. He said, who gifts me my faults, right? Because for him, okay, something's been exposed in me. I can work on that. If I work on that, I become a better person. I become a better believer, better character. It's going to benefit me. It's going to benefit my next life. So when we say things like, I was never like that, that person brought it out in me, we have to realize, no. It's actually us. And this is something that has come out. And now the challenge is, can I now rectify that negative behavior? That is the challenge. Which is why the Prophet ﷺ, as you hear this hadith very often as well, in khutbahs and in marriages, that he said, "Ana khayrukum li ahli wa ana khayrukum li ahli." The best of you is those who are best to their families or their wives, and I'm the best to my family. Why? Because if you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, did he have issues with his wives? He did, right? But then you've got issues, you're human beings, you're feeling emotions. What are you going to do about it, right? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to rise above that? Are you going to work on yourself? So that's the challenge. That's the challenge. And this is what's really going on behind the scenes, right? And this is what and if we do it right, if we get it right, you work on yourself. It'll be hard, and I know that what I'm saying is not easy. I know it's difficult. It's hard. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. But it's the struggle. This is the struggle to purify yourself. This is the struggle to improve your character, to become a better person. And if you do it, and if we do it, it benefits us. It benefits our spouse, because we're nicer people. The spouse is responding to us. They feel better because you're with a better spouse, you're a better parent, everything, right? So that's the challenge, and that's really what we're trying to do here. So I think there needs to be a lot more self-analysis going on when we have marriage issues. First thing always to ask is, what was my role in it? Because what often people do, they're very quick and find it easy to tell you what the other person did was wrong. But what they find more difficult is to actually see themselves and say, well, hold on, did I actually say that the right way? Was I saying it in the right tone, etc. So, often I'll get a couple and big long list. It's not like 2 points, it's like a long list. Like by the time they finish, you forgot what the first point was. All a list of complaints about the spouse, and then they put a little disclosure at the end. But I'm sure I'm not too perfect either. Just throw that in, just to say, well, I'm sure I've done a few things wrong as well, but really the problem's the other person, right? Whereas when you speak to the other person, they start telling you their side of the story, and you're like, the first person never told me that. First time, all the other details were missed out. So you're presenting your version of the story. It's not the version of the story, it's your version of the story. You speak to the other person, they present their version of the story. And then in between, you're trying to figure out what really actually was going on. So we have to be more thinking about, okay, that's what the other person did, but how did I react? What did I do? And how could I make it better? But that's a difficult thing to do, because that is the nafs, the ego likes to focus on the other and not on themselves. And if you look at the story of Iblis and Adam alayhi salam, that's exactly what Iblis did. Iblis was totally external. He was looking at, it's not me, I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't me, it was God, you did it to me. It was Adam, you did it to me. It was basically looking and blaming other people. So it's a very Iblisi trait. It's a very devilish trait that we have within ourselves. So we've got to be very careful of it. So the other The other big one, which came up yesterday in our discussion, and it's something that many of us struggle with, is arguments. So our starting point is that arguments are going to happen. I mean, I already said this friction, right? You're going to have these arguments. If you look at the Prophet ﷺ, he had arguments with his wives. I mean, it's quite telling that Sayyidina Aisha, there was a time where they had an argument, they couldn't resolve it, and they said, let's get a third person, a mediator. They said, who are going to call as a mediator? Let's call it was between the Prophet and Aisha. So the Prophet says, okay, who do you want to call? She goes, let's call my father, Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr comes, and the Prophet says, right, you can go first. So Sayyidina Aisha says, no, you go first, right? This happens with couples as well. Silence, isn't it? No one wants to start. And Sayyidina Aisha says, okay, you speak, but only speak the truth. So Abu Bakr got very angry, because obviously as a prophet of God, you believe everything he says the truth. But what does that show you? That shows you a very human response. It's a very human way that Sayyidina Aisha said that. She obviously believes he's a prophet, but at this point she's seeing him as her husband. And it's typical, isn't it? It's like when couples come, it's the same thing, isn't it? Oh, no, that's not true, that's not true. Tell the truth, right? So, but it shows you that even the Prophet ﷺ, at one point, we know that one instant, had to have somebody come in to resolve the issue. We also know that Sayyidina Aisha used to say that the Prophet said to Sayyidina Aisha, I know that when you're upset with me. She goes, how do you know that? She goes, when you're okay, you say, by the Lord of Muhammad. And when you're upset with me, you say, no, by the Lord of Ibrahim. Right? So again, we get this idea of, it wasn't all rosy-posy. Things were happening in the prophetic home because they're human beings. But, so we should expect arguments, but how do you resolve the arguments? The problem with people is that they'll come, typically they'll say, we need some advice. Why do you need advice? Or we just can't stop arguing. We're just arguing all the time. So the thing is, when it comes to arguing, you have to do it in a way which is productive. So we know that we're going to have arguments, but we want to have arguments in a way which are productive and not destructive. The problem is that most people, they just kind of free fall. They just kind of, whatever comes, so they're bringing up issues, raising voices, something swearing, this, that, whatever, and it all spirals out of control. The big, mess after half an hour, everyone just walks off in a huff. 2 days later, they get over it and they're back to normal. 3 weeks later, same thing happens, and it keeps going on like this. And I was saying yesterday that if you had a business and you're making a loss, right? You got a business, you're making a loss. Would you continue to do the same thing again? Let's just keep doing this for the next 10 years. We're making a loss, let's just keep doing it. We wouldn't, right? So we know that this doesn't work. And there's that expression, isn't it? A fool is somebody who does the same thing and expects different results. But for some reason, we will do the same thing over and over. It's almost like self-punishment. It's like we're punishing ourselves because we're not willing to think. Like we should stop and say, hold on, this is not healthy. This is not good. How can we do this better? So the way, very quickly, to improve arguments is you always have rules with arguments, right? You do not have arguments without rules. So for example, if the other person's got a habit of waffling, they're a waffler, right? They never get to the point. For example, you might put a rule, you got 5 minutes to explain your point. You see, put a timer on. Actually put a timer on. 5 minutes. I'm not going to speak, I will not interrupt. You tell me, whatever you want, you got 5 minutes to do it. And there's waffling, and you say, but we've got 1 minute left, by the way. You'll see how quickly they get to the point, right? So by putting in rules, you force people, right? Because otherwise, if you know The waffling will not stop. The waffle will go on for 1 hour, and we're still sitting there scratching our heads thinking, what we actually talking about? You've wasted an hour of your life. This way, you're pushing the person. So for example, that it could be like you make a, and then you make your own rules up, whatever works for you. Could be another rule like if somebody swears or is getting angry, we need to take a time out for a minute or something, whatever. So what I'm saying is you make rules, right? So that your arguments are structured. There's a structure to the argument. It's not just arguing for the sake of arguing. And the key thing always is, what you want to always have at the back of your mind is, right, what is the resolution? So 20 minutes, we've been arguing, right, okay, what's the conclusion? I know you're upset, I'm upset, okay, fine, but what are we doing? How are we going to solve this? That resolution solving attitude has got to be there. If you do that, then you have something to work on. It might happen that you don't do it, but it means the next argument you can say, well, this is what we agreed last time, we didn't do it, right, why didn't we do it, okay, blah, blah, blah. Then you're going somewhere, rather than just going around circles for years and years, okay? So that was the thing on arguments. But I would say that it has to come down to a discussion. So you've got an argument, unless we can apply this to other things as well when you're differing on something. You have to find a middle ground. You have to say, okay, well, this is how I see it. The person says, look, this is how I see it. And then, I mean, if you have somebody, like we have a parenting coach, you have somebody you can actually refer to and say, look, this is what we think, you're the expert, you tell us, that can solve it. Or if you don't have that, next best thing would be, okay, well, you put your arguments forward. And the thing is, your arguments should be based on evidence. It's not this, like, I think this, but why do you think that? And the other person brings their arguments, and then you try to come to some sort of compromise, which is more for the lenient person and less for the stricter person. Okay, so I mean, that's the reality. The reality is females in our community from maybe previous generations are more educated, they're working, they're independent financially. The thing is, why would it be seen as a threatening way? Like, I think you have to discuss with whoever you're marrying, how do they feel about it? To be honest, I work, this is what I want to do, I want to continue working, whatever it is. How do you feel about it? How would you feel if I'm earning more? Blah, blah, blah. So the thing is, if you're going to be in competition with one another, then you're going to feel threatened because of competition. Oh my God, she's earning more than me. But if it's like, okay, we're married, one person's earning more, so what? You know, it's going to benefit the family unit. If one person's earning a bit more, it doesn't really matter. But if you're going to earn more and then make the other person feel, well, I earn more than you. You know, if you're going to get on your high horse, yeah, then it's going to create problems. But if you're not going to get on your high horse, that okay, I'm earning, you know, inshallah, you know, we're a family. You know, if obviously females, they don't have to contribute if they want to. It's sadaqah for them. It's better. I mean, if you're married and you have a woman who's de-skilled, right, and dependent, so you might think that's good because, you know, she'll kind of do what I say, but if that's what you want from marriage, fine. But then when you have children, the primary person that's going to influence the children is the mother. So then, is it not in your interest to have a good, independent, strong woman? It is, because then she'll raise your children better. She's going to support you better. If you look at the Prophet's wives, does Aisha radiallahu anha, does she seem like a shy wallflower? Right? Anything but that. Right? But was she an asset? She was an absolute asset. Our tradition, a lot of hadith has reached us through Aisha. A lot of fatwas have reached us through Aisha. So having a strong woman was a positive. Khadija radiallahu anha, does she strike us as somebody who was a weak woman? No. We know in a time where it was a very male-dominated society, she was a businesswoman. She was doing things which other women were not doing. That shows a lot of strength of character. And we see that strength when the Prophet ﷺ has his difficult moment, his weak moment. First revelation comes down. Where does he go? He goes to his wife, Khadija. Who gives him the support? Khadija. Who gets him through that difficult period? Khadija. So that strength, that became an asset for the Prophet ﷺ. So I think it's these things should be discussed before marriage. And if you're going to marry someone who's going to feel threatened, then maybe that's not the right person for you then. I think that I've got an online program which is designed for single Muslims, and one of the reasons I put that together was to basically give people all the things that they need to be kind of thinking about before they get married. So I think that is a good starting point, because that then gets you thinking in a certain way, and you become clearer in terms of what you're actually looking for, and also helps you understand yourself better. Because the problem with a lot of people is that they will come to you and say, I'm looking to get married. You say, wonderful, what are you looking for? They say, a good sister. A good sister? Right. What does that mean? The only thing that doesn't mean is that you're not looking for a bad sister. Right? Good brother, what does that mean? You're not looking for a bad brother. But it doesn't actually mean anything. It sounds like it's the right thing to say, but it doesn't actually help you. Like, if I know all these people, you say good sister, say, well, there are 1,000 people I know that are good people, I'm going to pick somebody. But if you then have put some thought into it, you've done a bit of self-analysis, you've kind of looked at things, and you come and say, look, looking to get married, okay, what are you looking for? I'm looking for 3 main things. When you tell me 3 main things, I can then think, do I know anyone like that? Well, yeah, actually, I know this family. They're a bit like that. That might be a good suitable match. So the first thing is being more clearer. And then I think all these other, they're all means, the Rishta aunties or whatever it is, apps, marriage events, networks, whatever. I think that all of them are fine. But if you're clearer in what you're looking for, when you speak to them, you can tell them very quickly, this type of person, and they can think in their mind, who do I know like that? So it makes it a bit easier. If you just say good person, they will send everyone and their granny to your house. How do you get brothers, stroke something, men to open up about verbal and physical abuse they suffer from wives? So it's common they keep it as a result of stigma attached to what's speaking to their family and friends. Okay, and the second one is, if you can give advice on newly marriage counsellors mediated, how to be confident in speech, struggles of carrying out mediation sessions. So I'll start with the second question. Look, if you're in this field where you're trying to help couples and stuff, the first thing is to understand your role, okay? Because the verse in the Quran that says, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا, if you fear discord between them, فَبَعْثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا, send a mediator from his side, mediator from her side. إِنْ يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. This is a key point now. If they both parties if they want reconciliation, God will give them tawfiq, will give them success. Meaning, if they don't want reconciliation, they will not achieve it. So what does that mean? It means that it's up to the 2 parties, not your job. Your job is not to bring them together or solve the problem. Your job is to facilitate. It's them. It has to come down to them whether they want to make this work or not. All you're there to do is to bounce ideas. Could you do this better? How do you feel about this? You're just there to facilitate the conversation and allow them to come up with way forward. But end of the day, they've got to do it, not you. So I think that's the way you've got to appreciate. You've got to go in if you're a mediator or counsellor. That the solutions. I'm not. I'm just a facilitator. I'm just here to try and get people to talk and all the rest of it. I can't force people to do anything. That's it. And that way, then you take the pressure off yourself. In terms of the abuse, verbal, physical abuse, the thing is, although this is from the brothers, I mean, we can expand this to women as well. Abuse, no one should accept being abused. Okay, no one should accept being abused. You're in a marriage. You're not there to be abused. You have your own dignity. You're not supposed to be a doormat. You're not supposed to allow anyone to abuse you. What happens is that I think that the discussion in this particular area, which is with women's organisations or domestic abuse organisations, and I've written actually something on domestic abuse called "What Islam Really Says About Domestic Abuse." It was a women's organisation back in the day, and then I got involved a little bit, but I found that it's very much you have the abusers and then the victims. And abusers are all bad, and the victims are all innocent. And it's very black and white. And of course, we're totally against abuse. If you can help a person who's in an abusive situation, you should, all the rest of it. However, I think what you have to understand is, going back to what I was talking about before, taking self-responsibility. That for an abuser to be able to abuse, they need the abused. Let me say that again. So the abuser, for them to be able to abuse somebody, they need somebody that will accept their abuse. What does that? That means that one person is abusing and the other person is accepting the abuse. So you have to understand this, that when you're, so say it's that brother, you are at one level accepting the abuse. You should not be accepting somebody being verbally abusive or physically abusive. If you are, you're accepting that. When you're accepting that, you make the behaviour worse. So if a man, let's say, hit his wife, and then he grovels, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, all the rest of it, grovels, and she lets him back in. He does it again. He grovels, sorry. The message you're giving him is that, you can hit me, you can grovel a bit, and I'll let you do it again. I'll give you another chance. That's the message you're giving the person. Whereas, if the very first time it happened, she called her family, or she called the police, or got other people involved, basically, I'm not this is a red line. The message that he would get is, oh, that's a red line. If I do that, she's going to call the cops. She's going to call her brothers. She's going to call somebody, right? The message then you're giving the abuser is, no, you can't do this to me. So we need to protect ourselves as well. We need to realize that in these kind of situations, although maybe it's not intentional, but we're actually encouraging the abuser in a way when we accept the abuse. So standing up for yourself is an absolute must, right? So in that situation, whether it's males or females, I'd say the same advice. Nobody should accept abuse. And you put your foot down at that point, and you show that this is a red line. And if you cross this red line, there will be consequences. If I know if you say, look, this is a red line, right? If you do this again, I'm walking out. If you say that, and then the person does that, and you don't walk out, you've just given me the message that, you know something, you're just full of words. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to take it. And so they'll keep doing it, You actually encourage that situation. Whereas if you draw a red line and you say, right, you do that, I'm walking out, and the person does it, and you walk out, they might grovel and maybe reconcile it, but the person knows now, okay, that's a red line. This person will act upon what they're saying. Right? So that's very important when it comes to stopping yourself getting abused. Does studying the temperaments aid one's marriage? I've got to be careful now. I'm in Birmingham. I know that some people obviously are into this, the whole temperaments thing. My own personal perspective, you can do actually online tests. You just go in and figure out what your temperament is. And you can maybe, the other person you're looking at, ask them to do it and see if your temperaments match. Okay, fair enough. To that extent, I think there's some benefit. But I don't think that this is a be and end all. Like if you knew the temperament of your spouse, that does not mean that you're going to have a great marriage and you're going to get on. Because you cannot get away from the hard work. Whether you are completely compatible or not, there's going to be friction. There's going to be arguments. Like, you see this from the seerah very clearly, right? It will happen. You will still have to deal with those difficult emotions and feelings and all the rest of it. You cannot get away from the test. So yeah, this can help. Anything which helps you understand human nature, yourself better, the other person better, is going to be beneficial. But it's not going to be, in and of itself, the be and end all when it comes to marriage. Meaning that you could end up with somebody who's a different temperament to you, and you can still make that marriage work. How do we keep a perfect marriage interesting? Wife cooks, etc. Husband is happy, works. Woman feels bored. First of all, get rid of perfect. Forget perfect. See that word? Throw it in the dictionary. Throw out your vocabulary, right? Forget perfectionism. If you want your marriage to work, if you're a perfectionist, you need to drop it. If you don't drop it, you're going to cause yourself problems. You're going to cause other problems for the other person, right? We are not angels. We are human beings. Human beings, by their very nature, are deficient. Human beings, by their very nature, get things wrong, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. We will never get it right all the time, right? So you need to get rid of the perfect, that word perfect. Wife cooks, husband is happy, works, right? Women feels bored. So you have to ask yourself, okay, why do you feel bored? Where's the boredom coming from? Is it in the monotony of life? Is it routine? Is it, do you find like when you're hoovering, you think this is mind numbing? What you have to identify, what exactly do you find boring about your life? Number one. Number two is we find things boring. Obviously, the part of it's human nature, monotony, isn't it? You keep doing the same thing. If you have dal every day, right? Tastes brilliant on Monday, tastes brilliant Tuesday, Wednesday's getting a bit, Thursday, Friday, like, is it dal again, right? We're just human beings, isn't it? Story in Surah Baqarah, Bani Israel, they got fed up of roasted bird, isn't it? So, part of it is just breaking the monotony. So you have to think, okay, well, I'm just doing the same thing every day. Mix it up, do things differently. Number one. But secondly, I think the other thing you can do is that we often get bored because you can't see or feel the point of what I'm doing, isn't it? It's like pointless. Like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I here? Like washing the dishes, right? Okay, right? Or whatever it might be. It feels purposeless. It feels, whereas if you're going out and you're working, you feel there's a purpose to it. So then, the trick is to bring meaning into your tasks. So the mundane tasks that we do every day, day in, day out, cooking, cleaning, hoovering, right, is to put meaning into it. Is to remind yourself, why am I doing this? I'm here to serve my family. Now, it's become ibadah. I'm doing it to make my husband happy, or the husband does something to make my wife happy. Now, you've put meaning into it. It's become ibadah, right? Your kids are getting on your nerves. You're trying to be patient, right? And you think, oh my God, these kids do know nothing. But again, when you remind yourself, these are little human beings entrusted to me by God. They're believers. They're, as I've said before, they're awliya. They're friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by me looking after them, God's pleased with me. So you've brought meaning into your life. So sometimes what it is, it's just about reminding ourselves That why am I doing this? And reminding yourself there is a purpose to what you're doing. There is meaning in what you're doing. How do you find solace being single in my 30s, accepting Allah has decreed this for me? Tips on finding someone. Okay, that's another thing. It might be a bit controversial, but I'll say it anyway. Marriage is not the be-in and end-all, right? So this goes for people who are not married and also people who are maybe divorced. It's not the be-in and end-all. Yes, it's emphasised in the religion. Yes, we know all this stuff. But it is not the beginning and end of your life. There are people in our tradition who, lived very fulfilling lives, done a lot in their lives, and they were not married. People like Imam Nawawi, there's other scholars. There's actually a scholar called Abu Fattah Ghudda, and he's got a book, and it's about that thick. I haven't read it, but it's one of those ones you put in a shelf in it. I need to read it. And then you get another one, I need to read that as well. Then people look at all your books and think, mashallah, and you're like, I haven't read any of these. So he's got a book called Al-Ulama Al-Uzzab Alladhina Atharu Al-Ilma Ala Zawaj. Right? The single scholars who preferred knowledge over marriage. Right? Meaning what? Meaning that we do have people in our tradition who didn't get married. Rabi al-Basriya never got married. Right? Look at what she achieved. So it doesn't mean that if you never get married, it's the being and end all. It's not. You can still be a believer. You can still do a lot of good in your life. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, if you're in your 30s, you've been looking. Again, you have to analyze. It's that same thing, principle I was saying before. If you just keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, it's not going to work. So think about yourself. How have you been going about doing this? Have you actually thought things through properly? Do you really know what you're looking for? Or are you just hoping that somebody will come along? All of those questions. And then one of the things in the course I mentioned, because I actually do mention a section on people who maybe have not got married. One thing I think that people miss is that there's a certain vibe we give out. Okay, so when you're with certain people, you just like you were doing well until you spoke to that person, isn't it? And then after that conversation, you're like, oh, you're just down, right? Because that person's energy was very draining. The person's energy was very negative. It was just like it just sucked the life out of you. Yeah. So we get affected by one another. So that means there's a certain energy you're giving out, a certain vibe. So if you're, for example, let's say you go to a marriage event and you walk in and you're say in your 30s and you think, oh my God, all these other people are like in their 20s, right? And they've got what I've got, they've got a career and all the rest of it, and they're good and attractive. I've got no chance. The likelihood of you finding someone in that event is going to be very low. Why? Because you've already told yourself. You've already told yourself, and the thing is, this is self-made. It's not true. You just made it up. You've told yourself, I've got no chance. And so now you're giving out a vibe in that gathering that when people come, that by the way, I've got no chance. You're better off over there. And what will happen? They'll see you and they'll go over there. Because you're giving that vibe out. So if you give this vibe out, I'm in my 30s, no one's marrying me, no one's going to marry me, no one's going to marry you. Because you have already decided that no one's going to marry you. Where's the reliance in God? Do we not say that God can do anything? God can do anything, isn't it? So everything is possible. But if you say, yeah, Allah, I haven't found anyone so far, right? I'm going to take these steps to reevaluate how I'm doing things. I'm going to come out with a positive attitude. So you go into that gathering and you look at the other people and you say, okay, inshallah, I've got just as much chance as anyone else. You're probably going to get more people coming to you. So be aware of what vibe are you giving out? What is it about you that you need to change to make yourself more attractive? Now, don't just mean physically, but as a person, right? Because if you give it the right vibe, somebody will snap you up. Simple as that. So you're doing something You have to look at yourself. What am I doing? What message am I giving out, which I need to change? The thing with marriage is that, look, you have multiple relationships, and your challenge is to juggle all of them and make all your relationships work. That's basically what it is. So your spouse, whether it's your husband or wife, that obviously you have to make that work, because that is the person you're spending the most time with. And if you've got children, that's the person is the parent of your child with you. So that is your focus. Over and above that, obviously you've got other relationships. You've got your parents, you got your siblings, you got her parents, her siblings, and that's just trying to manage those relationships. So trying to be on good terms. And the thing is, there's going to be that uncle that gets on your nerves, that auntie that gets on your nerves. We shouldn't. The thing is, sometimes we expect that everything should be just perfect. We shouldn't have any difficulties. It's okay for people in Palestine or whatever to be having very difficult lives, but our life should be hard. And as soon as any difficulty comes, I can't cope. I'm stressed. I'm worried. Like, what were you expecting? We're not in paradise. We're in dunya. Dunya by its very definition is lowly. Dunya by very definition is testing. Why are we so surprised that we don't get on with certain in-laws? We don't get on with certain relationships. We find some relationships more difficult than others. It's life. That's life. People in the past had the same issues. We've got the same issues. Children's generation have the same issues, same challenges. So part of it is just actually being more realistic that, look, that's just part of life. Yeah, so I think this is it's a good question actually. It's not just about a woman's emotional needs, it's a man's emotional needs as well. Because the relationship is not just a physical relationship, it's an emotional relationship. It's everything. And it's true. See, when we say Islam, it just talks about, the financial. The thing is, the fiqh just talks about the bare minimum. Like if you're building a building, right, you need like a foundation, you need some walls, right? That's it. That'll give you enough. That's all the fiqh talks about. So we don't try to make our marriages work through the basic fiqh. Like you don't just get minimum wage and just celebrate and say, I've got minimum wage, and then put it in Instagram or Facebook. By the way, I've got a job and I'm getting minimum wage. Woo! Right? No one does that. The thing is, you get it and you think, okay, this is a minimum. I want to do more. I want to progress. I want to get more money. No one's just satisfied with minimum wage, isn't it? So why is it that we just look at the bare minimums? That's the bare minimum, right? But what we should be doing is looking at the Prophet ﷺ, looking at his relationship with Aisha, looking at his relationship with Khadija. Okay, what was that? What did they do that made that relationship so strong? Why was the Prophet ﷺ sad for one entire year when Khadija passed away? Why was it such a massive blow? What was it she was giving him that he felt so lost without her? And we can figure it out, because we know, like for example, when the revelation came down, the emotional support, we can see it. We can see what she was giving him. So it's a two-way process. However, often, especially with men, they don't get it. They don't maybe understand the emotional needs, and that's where I think women need to be better at just explaining to men what they need. And I tell you this much, see, when you explain to a man what you want from them, they are so happy. They are so relieved, because they don't have to figure anything out. They know exactly what they need to do, and they will jump at the chance to do it, because they're like, okay, I can't go wrong with now. I know exactly what I need to do. She just told me you need to give me a hug. That's it. I need to give a hug. That's it. Right? But see, this thing of you never hugged me. We're like, well, yeah, I saw you upset and I thought you need some space, but I wanted a hug. Oh, did you? Oh, but I thought, see, there's a lot of like trying to figure things out. But maybe at some point when the connection's better, it will become like that. But sometimes it's actually better to say, look, when I was upset, I really, what I wanted from you was a hug. Oh, is it? Right, okay, I didn't know that, whatever. Right? Explaining to them what you want from them, and then when they start practicing it, they'll get the hang of it. So don't try and wait till the man figures out what your emotional needs are. I've got my own views on this, which is maybe not the standard view. So, Ghayrah is sometimes translated as positive jealousy. I think that, I mean, having thought about it and looked at it and all the rest of it, I think that the way sometimes men understand it can be problematic, because I think that can turn very easily into controlling. So, and then they mask it with, this is just Ghayrah. So nobody likes to be controlled. You know, someone tries to control you, don't like it. Your wife's the same, doesn't like to feel controlled. So I think that rather than going down that route, I think it's much healthier and better, you know, to kind of just explain how you feel. That, you know, I feel that, you know, when you're out or whatever, sometimes worry about your safety or whatever it might be. I think that's a much better way, so that the person then understands, okay, you mean, it's coming from a good place, you mean well for them, and then you, between yourselves, come up with something which you're happy with and they're happy with. Would you advise putting things into a marriage contract beforehand? Example, you want your own house. You should definitely explain this or discuss this beforehand. Do not leave things to assumptions. Don't make assumptions. If you want your own home, that should be made very clear from the outset. I mean, you can have it in written form as well, if you know, as a backup. I don't think that's an issue, but you should definitely make your stance very, very clear from the beginning. And sometimes, you know, when it comes to in-laws, we were having this question before, living with the in-laws. And the thing is, sometimes women will agree that, okay, yeah, that's fine, I'll live with in-laws. But the thing is, you don't know how things are going to pan out. You don't know if you'll get on with the mother-in-law. You don't know what the relationship is going to be like. It's much better to say, look, that's fine. I'm happy to live with your parents for a period of time, maybe a couple of years or something, then we want to get our own place or whatever. Or if you are going to go in that situation, to say, I'm happy to live with them as long as, you know, things don't get bad. But if things, you know, are unworkable and things are, you know, everyone's miserable, then you have to agree that we'll move out. You have to get that, kind of, that's what my advice would be. Because then what you're doing is, you're going into the situation, you're happy to try it. If it doesn't work out, then you've made it very clear that if it doesn't work out, we need to move out. Because if you say, look, no, I'm happy to live with your parents, and then things go pear-shaped, you say, I want my own house, but you say, well, we discussed this before marriage. I made it very clear that I wasn't going to leave, and you said you'd live. Now you're backtracking. Whereas if you say, look, I'm willing to try it for a year or two, whatever it is, or I'm willing to try it, but if things do not work, then you have to agree that we would move out. Do you agree to that, yes or no? The guy says yes, then you can always say, well, this is what we agreed. All right? So this is a good question in terms of children. Because, I mean, in terms of what can you do to fix your marriage, I don't know, because I don't know the ins and outs. The 20 years is, you know, I can't answer it from a bit of paper. 20 years is lots happened. I'd need to a lot more detail before I could advise. Like I said, you can make an appointment, we can discuss it. In terms of this last bit, how can I prevent my kids from taking after us? You can't. And this brings us on to another question about this idea that we have in our community that, you know, I'm in the marriage for my kids. So some people, they're not in the marriage, they're not happy, no one's happy, but you think, well, you know something, I don't want to get divorced because I don't want it to have an adverse effect on my children. It's better for the children to have both parents. I don't fully agree with that. And the reason I don't fully agree with that is that your children are affected by, the children are affected by the parents' marriage. For example, if they saw an abusive marriage, their default programming then becomes to accept abuse. So when they get married, they're likely to accept abuse because they've seen it. And they saw, well, that's what my mum and dad did. And how many couples I've met, and they're like, I can see similarities with my parents now. So you have to keep at the back of your mind, everything that your children are exposed to affects them. Everything is going into them. They're like, think of them like sponges, right? They're just sponging everything up. So if you're in a loveless marriage, you are teaching them this is perfectly fine, this is normal. If you are in a rocky marriage, you're doing the same thing. If you're in an abusive marriage, you're doing the same thing. So if you're in a marriage where there actually is no relationship between the husband and wife, that's also damaging for the kids to witness that. And obviously there's various degrees, the highest being if it's an abusive marriage. And then that will affect them when they also get married. So you're actually not doing them a favour if you're staying in a very bad marriage. It's not good for the children. You're actually better off out of the marriage, and the children see the parents being a lot better with one another. That's more healthy for them. And also this is also ties into our understanding of marriage. We often see marriage as like, you know, it's an absolute must, and divorce is like the worst thing in the world. The thing is, this idea of till death do us part is not from our tradition. It's a Christian notion, right? That that's it. You're in marriage, you're with this person, like or lump it, that's it, you're going to see it through. That attitude is not actually Islamic. And if you look at we were talking about this yesterday, if you look at the companions, we all agree the companions are the best of people after the prophets, don't we? Simple question, did the companions get divorced? Yeah. And it wasn't just one or two or three. Lots of companions got divorced, and they used to remarry. So for some reason, their understanding of, they didn't have this ideal idea of marriage that, okay, when I marry this woman, it's going to be my husband, it's going to be, I'm going to be the same person for the rest of my life. They were very flexible. Got on. We didn't get on, okay, you know, let's get divorced and let's marry somebody else. So I think that, and then that's why divorce wasn't such a big taboo. Women would get divorced and they'd find out such and such as woman's divorced. She's in her iddah period. There would be men waiting until the iddah period finishes to go and propose. Right? That's the kind of society they had. They didn't have this, they weren't hung up on it. That story of Thabit, this came up yesterday about attraction. So the wife of Thabit, she comes to the Prophet ﷺ, and this is a pivotal hadith for khula. It comes up when you study khula. And she says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm not very happy with Thabit, I want a divorce. Prophet ﷺ asks, well, what's the problem? Anything wrong with his religion? No. Anything wrong with his character? No. Okay, nothing wrong with his religion, nothing wrong with his character, there's nothing wrong, so there's no real issue. It's not massive abuse going on or anything like that. She goes, okay, well, what is it then? She goes, well, I fear kufr. And what she meant was, because kufr can be ingratitude, what she meant was, I fear that I might fall into extramarital affairs, right? Because what she means is, I'm not attracted to him. Like, it's not working, right? I just don't like him. What does the Prophet say? Does he say, no, you must stay in this marriage? No, he just says, okay, fine. Calls Thabit, wife doesn't want to be with you. It says to Thabit, okay, see the garden that you gave her as a mahar, give her that back. She'll give that back to you, and just you give her a divorce. That was it. Right? So I think that this idea of, you know, you must stay in the marriage at all costs it's not an Islamic concept. You should stay in the marriage if you can make your marriage work. Right? If you're not making your marriage work, I'm telling you, you're damaging your children. Right? That is also damaging to your children. So the solution is make your marriage work. Right? The solution is not I stay in the marriage under all costs and be miserable. My husband's miserable, I'm miserable, children are miserable, we're all miserable. Life. Why do you want to have a miserable life?
Go on from that question.
Yeah.
You advise that marrying within same culture but different countries like Pakistan, India, and what about if it's totally different culture altogether? Would you
Yeah. So this question's about cross-cultural marriages. Um, for the vast majority of people, this is the like if I was giving advice to, for most cases, I would say it's much better. It's permissible to marry anyone you want, but much better to marry from your own ethnicity and your own kind of background. Why? Because it's a similar kind of culture, your similar mentality. You get the nuances. It's much easier to communicate, etc., etc. I think that as soon as you, even if it's the same like ethnic background, but they're from a different, like say you're from here and they're from Pakistan or something, that's a different country. It's got a different ethos. It's got different things happening. The person will have a different background. They may have different ideas of parenting. There's a lot of things which are going to be, there's a lot of stuff that you have to then negotiate. And you can do it, but you're just giving yourself more hurdles to overcome, or there are more potential hurdles. And then if it's different ethnicities, I think if it's like, if you're both like born in the UK, let's say you're both born in the UK, you're Arab and the girl's Pakistani or something like that, that still can work because you kind of share a common culture, which is you've been brought up here. But again, you'll have certain ways of doing things which will be specific to your culture. And so when you get married, they might think that's a bit weird, and the other person might think that's a bit weird. So there will be, again, there'll be more differences. So guess what I'm trying to say is, if you go for a background where there's less differences, it's just easier. It's easier to make the marriages work. The more different you are in terms of your cultures, in terms of your ethnicities, backgrounds, all that, you can still make the marriage work, but there's more flexibility required from both sides. You have to be more accommodating, more understanding, and they have to be as well. Is it sunnah to do an extensive wedding, traditions, mendi, walima? I don't want to waste money, but my potential partner wants to do this. I mean, the Islamically, there's nikah. Nikah is a contract, 5-minute job. And then after that is a walima. Walima is just food provided by the husband, and it's a sunnah. That's the bare minimum. All the other stuff in between is cultural, and different cultures, have different events and all the rest of it. I don't think there's any issue with it if that's what you want to do. They're just social events, so I think this is down to more of a negotiating between the two and coming up with some sort of middle way, because it's more of a cultural thing. When getting to know someone, should a third person always be present? Can we exchange socials, numbers? I think what's happened is, see, in the past it was different. We didn't have mobile phones. We, there was certain processes, physical space. It was very physical. Families are more involved. I think that now times have moved. You've got a generation who are, it's very, very normal to them, very natural to them. It's not like a big thing to send a WhatsApp message, we had yesterday the question about DMing. That's very natural to this new generation. So I think that you have to always bear in mind the changes in cultural norms. So to younger people, it's not as big a deal, whereas maybe in an older generation it would have been seen as a bit more taboo. So I think you have to accept that that's part of it. I think that in terms of like the haram and the halal of it, if you want to say that, if there's no, you're not meeting in private, right? Where it's enclosed space, there's no khalwa, there's no physical touching, there's none of that going on. Your intention is marriage. You're talking with, you're keeping yourself right, you're trying to do things properly, then it's permissible. It's permissible if you met outside and was going to say Costa, but Costa's on the boycott list these days. Everything's on a boycott. You can't find a coffee shop anymore. Tinderbox, I think Tinderbox is not on the boycott list, but they're the Chaiwala, yeah, Chaiwala. But then, so you have to find a place where, if you're meeting there, it's in public. You're not there to mess about. You with a noble intention. You can't say it's haram. You can't say it's not permissible. Whether it's advisable, I think that's a cultural thing. I mean, would the like sometimes the families know about it. They're okay. Yeah, why don't you just meet and see if you like each other, and then rather than getting us involved, we go over with our family, they go over with their family. We start cooking and all the rest of it, and you guys don't like each other. So, I think it comes down to individuals, and also then you have people who maybe are new Muslims or don't have family, so they don't have as much of a network. So there's a lot of variables, I think. But I think going back to the other thing was, if you're clearer in what you're looking for, then it shouldn't take that long, one or two kind of conversations to see, okay, is this actually going to go anywhere? Is there potential? And then obviously if it's going somewhere, you get then the families involved, and then it goes through the processes. How to explain the struggle of the nafs and need of introspection with husband without him thinking I'm blaming him or finger pointing. He gets triggered by my teenage son but blames son's actions for his angers. The blame game is Iblis. Always remember that. The blame game is Iblis. So you cannot blame anyone for how you're feeling. I think the thing about, if you're saying that the struggle of the nafs and the introspection, is how you talk about it. If you just like say, oh, by the way, I heard this talk and it was talking about the ego, and it was really interesting because it was saying, we've all got egos, and some of us it's like this, some of it. So you're talking to him in a way which he thinks you're not talking to him, but you are. Yeah. So it's how you deliver it. Or if you say, look, I see you've got an anger problem, that's probably your ego at play, blah blah blah. Then he's going to get his defenses up. So I think it's how you deliver the message. A lot of it is down to how you deliver the message. So one of the things I always say with couples is, you want behaviour in your spouse to change, don't say you. See, you need to start doing this more. But what you do is you say, something I've noticed, we're not very good at respecting each other, for example. We need to start respecting each other. He's not going to disagree. He's going to say, no, I think we should disrespect each other, right? Everyone's going to agree to that. But because you use the we word, the other person's not taking it personally anymore. It's like, yeah, we need to do it. Okay, and then you say, how do you think we could do that? What do you think we're not doing so well? You see, so then when you're making it more about, okay, we collectively do this, both of us are doing this, how do we do it? So it's about getting the person on board. Is there any truth to the statement, I'm too happy to get married? If you're too happy to get married, don't get married. Stay happy.
Any more questions? That was the last one.
Okay. I know this. The things that I'm saying, they sound like very difficult because they are difficult, right? I'm making no pretense that okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. But I know to do it is hard, and it's very hard when we've not been doing it. It takes time to practice these things, so we shouldn't beat ourselves up. We'll get things wrong. Just take that as guaranteed. We will get things wrong. I teach this stuff, right? I go on about it, I get it wrong all the time, right? So I know it's hard, but it's about the struggle, it's about the effort you're putting in. It's about, okay, I took 2 steps forward, I went 1 step back, but I still took 1 step forward. And then again, you go back, and it's a bit about back and forth. You sometimes say the wrong thing, shouldn't have said that, reflect. Very simple, if you say something you shouldn't have said to your spouse, you realise afterwards, you didn't realise at the time, just apologise. I said this, I was thinking about it, I shouldn't have said it, but I apologise, and that's it. So it's a ongoing process. I know it's hard, But this is what we need to do, inshallah ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslim kathira. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.